Hello and welcome! PolishLynx here. We are playing around the Mulberry bush. What did it say? The 4th summer, 1792. 19. You'd imagine if they actually were able to live 200 years. That would be interesting. But yes, it is the 4th summer. And Matty had a crisis. Not the game. I found her hiccoughing, her eyes brimming with salty tears. Some of them dripped down her cheeks, flushed, so pink they masked her freckles. That was a pity. I like the freckles. They made her look cute. A series of imperfections stippled across her otherwise flawless skin. Why is it not... Okay. They made her feel more like a real human being, and less like a austere, untouchable girl in the portrait in the drawing room. An equal, not Lady Matilda Addison, but Matty. My Matty. My. And for a few glorious moments in that blisteringly hot summer, she really was mine. She stood before me, her hands hanging limply at her sides, two appendages with no immediately obvious use. For she was sniffling, shoulders shaking, unable to bite back the soft, girlish sobs that racked her body. She didn't use her hands to brush the tears away. Maybe her thoughts were so jumbled, she just didn't think. Or maybe she didn't have the energy. It wouldn't be polite to ask. I'd never seen Matty look so distraught before. Not once, during the 4 years I had known her. 4 long, lazy summers. Time ticking away beneath the boughs of the mulberry tree. When the tears began their slow, steady procession down Matty's cheeks, it pulled hard. She was crying, but with a certain grace and dignity, despite the flushed cheeks, the soft sniffles, the snotty nose. She didn't howl, she didn't bawl. Instead, she tried to keep her misery bottled deep down inside, but her eyes sparkled all the same. There was something brave about it. Noble. But I didn't like it. Okay, that's good. The fact that you don't like her crying. That's good. You know, the fact that she's crying. That's the fact that he doesn't like that is good. Was that just how Fair Lady soaped? Was that something her tutors taught her? Slotted in between sessions of swing comforters, or playing the piano, or locating Sweden on an old globe. She should have been crying harder. No. She was crying, but with a certain grace and dignity. Despite the flushed cheeks, the soft sniffles, the snotty nose. She didn't howl, she didn't bawl. Isn't this literally the same what we just read? Why is it appearing... Okay, it's a little different. Instead, she tried to keep her misery bottled deep down inside, but her eyes sparkled all the same and I could hardly stand it. A girl like Matty, who threw caution to the wind, and was content to gambol about in the gardens like a baby goat, should not have been minding her manners quite so carefully, staring at the ground almost shyly. Matty should not have been shy around me. There was no need. I would have loved her, accepted her, no matter what state she was in, no matter how sodden with tears. Did he tell her that, I wonder? Each and every tear that clung to her long, pale eyelashes was just one more thing to cherish. Matty, I said, and my voice faltered, and I didn't know what to say. Pitted against her tears, pure as spring water, words were rendered meaningless. But I still tried to persevere. I would never have forgiven myself if I had left her, all alone, to try and sniffle down her sobs. How could I have done anything so cruel? I, who loved her more than anybody else. I really did love her. Did you say it? Matty, I'm sorry for the loss. I know it might not count for much, but I know how much crappable, or should I say crabapple, crab up. Did I say crab apple? Easier to say, definitely. Crab apple meant to you. And I just wanted to know she didn't suffer. She didn't. How do you know that? Matty demanded, her voice distinctly through her sobbing. How do you know? You can trust my father. He's a good man. He likes crab apple too. She tried to kill him. She nearly split his skull in two. But she didn't, and he's fine. He might be fine, but crab apple. I know, I'm sorry, Matty. I'm so sorry. All she did was break her leg. It was just a break. She didn't need to die. We need to put her down. But horses cannot run if they break their legs. And all horses live to run. It was the kindest thing to do. Wasn't it? What? What? I feel like this doesn't make sense, to be honest. Is that how it's done? I mean, again, I don't know anything about horses, but I would say you don't, like, keys their existence when they break a leg. Maybe in the 18th century it was different. I don't know. Seems like not something you have to do. That was what Lord Addison said, and what my father said. But I did wonder. They could hardly have asked Crab Apple for her equine opinion. Even though they had attempted to, they would not have understood her, and she would not have understood them. An impasse. Stalemate. It wasn't kind at all! Matty flared up, her hands clenched into fists, her expression contorting to one of hot, bitter, tear-stained anger. How can we be kind? They killed her! They killed Crabapple, my best friend! And she had a point. I opened my mouth, but my lips felt cracked, dry, and no words would wrench themselves out of my throat. No words, other than an abashed, I'm sorry. Sorry, Matty repeated, and she looked me up and down. She looked regal, noble, years beyond her true age, for she was still such a small girl, and she insisted on wearing those old dresses of hers to play in the garden. Lady Addison had purchased this dress for Matty 4 years ago, but it still fit her, for it was a little pinched about the arms, slightly too short about the legs. It strained, just slightly, about the chest. But for she was at the tender age where she was beginning to grow into adulthood, she was not an adult just yet, and her horse had just died, been killed, rather, and didn't she have the right to cry under such circumstances? To bawl. To scream and yell, and stamp her feet against the ground, and throw her pillows across her bedroom, and stones through the mullioned windows. She was many things, her emotions all coexisting inside one tiny prepubescent body, and they pulled her every which way. A fair lady, a stubborn brat, almost an adult, not quite yet, just a little girl. And the girl I loved more than anybody in the world. Is what the stable boy says. Are you sorry for? She asked me, her eyes big and green and serious. Are you really sorry, Oliver? Her gaze was sharp enough to cut. Her words were weapons. Complete and utter devastation. I'm sorry, Matty. I really am. I pause. I know saying sorry won't bring Crabapple back, and I know it won't make any difference, but I really am. I'm sorry. Oliver! And with a small sniffle that sounded like a sigh, Matty crossed the distance between us. 1 step, then 2, then 3, and rested her head against my chest, against my chest. Her forehead was warm. I thought I could hear the sound of her blood pulsating beneath her soft skin, but it was probably my imagination. Might actually not be. It was far more likely to be the beating of my own heart, fluttering anxiously, skipping like stones across a pond, but louder. Far, far louder. My heart was pounding so hard. I was terrified that Matty would be able to hear it, and she would judge me. She would surely judge me. Her body was warm. A different kind of warmth to the summer sun that filtered through the green leaves and played across the petals of ivory daisies. It was comforting, all-encompassing, and, most importantly, it was all for me. Mine and mine alone. My body moved naturally, like the motions of the moon as it tracks across the night sky. I hardly realized what I was doing when I held her close against my chest, her forehead against my breast, her body hunched over, enveloped in my embrace. She was so tiny, so small, just like a fairy. It was the first time I had ever thought of Matty. For a few precious moments, my Matty, of being fragile, but she was, undeniably, at that moment, she was delicate. I wanted to protect her. I let my head rest atop of hers as she nuzzled against my chest, hiding the tears that streamed down her cheeks. I inhaled despite chastising myself for the action, and surely Matty would have found it unnerving if she were in a fit frame of mind, and Crabapple had not died. She would have rolled her eyes and told me I was being unpleasant. Might be the case. Freak! But she did not push me away, she did not say a word, even as I inhaled the aroma of her hair, tart like unripe mulberries, and dirt and the great outdoors, unwashed. Matty hated bathing when she was younger. The prospect of... what? The prospect of being clean seemed to fill her with great disenchantment, and she would hiss, cat-like, when her mother folded her limp locks of hair and told her to take better care of herself. Sometimes, I needled her on the subject, asking her whether she would melt if she was caught in a downpour. But I loved her all the same. I loved every last bit of hair, all the dirt and grime, the skulls and sighs, the poor manners and the puffy eyes. The bitter, sad, scared, angry tears. As I held her close, I wanted to subsume her into my own being, for the two of us to become one. A romantic notion, like something from the 1001 Nights. I don't think I read that. Idealistic. But time continues to tick on and on and on. 1793. The 5th summer. By the 5th summer, Matty had changed. She was no longer a little girl, poised on the threshold between childlike innocence and mature cynicism. She was 13, a teenager, beginning to blossom into a real lady. No longer did Matty wear the loose dresses of her youth, adorned with flowers, her hair a loose and unmanageable mane. She began to tie her hair back neatly, with strips of ribbon thinner and finer than the wrist of a newborn baby. She walked differently too. Gone were the days when she was content with stripes about the gardens like a ragamuffin, burrs and brambles and brackens snagged in her dresses, her shoes caked in mud, and her stockings racked up. She walked regally, with elegance, her head held high as though a book was balanced atop her brilliantly blonde crown. I mean, it might have been how she learned that. She even remembered to pinch either side of her skirts with her hands so they didn't trail across the ground. In the space of a short, scant year, the little girl with Matty had been vanished almost completely, without a trace, only spots and smears left behind, if you knew where to look. She was changed, and changed greatly, but the Matty I had known and had loved was not gone. She did not climb trees anymore, for fear of losing her hands, and she did not seek me out during breaks between her piano playing, or sewing, or French verb conjugation. That's kinda sad. Still, however, our paths seemed to cross, perhaps inevitably. Just like birds migrating for the winter, passing one another in the washed-out icy blue sky. We found our way together, attracted by some inexplicable force, maybe habit, or perhaps something deeper, more inexplicable, impossible to see, but there all the same. The roots of a tree. The mulberry tree, beneath which we had idled so much of our time, eating black fruits, so they burst between our teeth, and the juice dripped down our chins. It was under this tree that Matty and I had sworn, quite solemnly, to be partners in crime, co-conspirators against the iron fist of the indomitable Lady Addison. It was here, too, only one summer hence, that Matty had rested her head against my chest and had cried herself boneless, her body limp. A ragdoll of a girl, with unwashed hair the color of straw and eyelashes all clumped together with her crying. I could not imagine the new Matilda Addison crying. She seemed far too prim and proper for such a mawkish affair. But still, we found one another as though it were predestined. Ordained by God. Whoa. Oh, she grew up, okay? Why, hello there, Oliver. And her voice changed, she said, and even her voice sounded different now. A touch more nasal, perhaps. Her vowels rounder and fuller. Her consonants less harsh. She was politer than she had been in her youth. But the way she spoke was so careful, so calculated, drilled into her head after several years' worth of elocution lessons, that it sounded insincere. I think she was being insincere too. She said hello, but I doubted that she meant it. And though she smiled, her eyes did not. The old Matty rarely smiled. The new Matty would smile frequently at foolish things that did not deserve her smiles. Her father's ineffectual bluster, her mother's petty complaints, the compliment gentlemen paid her when they came to visit. A good deal of a gentleman came to visit Matty. Now she was nearing the age where marriage prospects were not unthinkable. Maybe that was why she had started to smile more. She had to, even if she did not feel like it, for the sake of her future. What men wanted a sullen wife, with lips pursed and her tongue poisoned. Personally, I did not mind. I far preferred that Matty, but she was already a relic of the past. My opinion hardly counted for much, being a mere stable hand. And Matty let me know it too. Matilda. Hello, Lady Addison, I greeted her with a small bow. She giggled, holding one hand up to her mouth, the lips soft and pink, the sunlight playing across them so they looked even lovelier than ever before. She used to bite her lips when she felt anxious, worrying them with her teeth. She didn't do that anymore either. You do not need to be so formal, Oliver, she said. We were playmates since our childhood, were we not? I was under the impression that you were a lady and I mere a servant. I said, my voice cool, carefully distant. I wished I didn't have to be so distant with Matty, my Matty, but she wasn't mine anymore. That was abundantly clear. She had changed too much. Even so, Matty attempted to bridge the distance between us. She did not do so physically, as she had done last summer, her forehead against my chest and my head atop of hers, but she tried to reach out with words. Words that sounded far too accomplished, so devoid of awkward sharp edges it disoriented. I may be a lady, but you are still my friend, she said, as though it was that simple. Maybe to her it was. Or maybe she was pitying me. Do you still believe that? I asked her. Of course I do, she said, holding one hand to her chest. I have missed you, Oliver. Really? When she appealed to me, her eyes big, her voice cracked, and her round, neatly formed "oh" sounds slipped, and she sounded like the little girl I was accustomed to. She sounded like my Matty. "Yes," she said. "I've been suddenly busy as of late. I haven't had any time to spend with you. I've been wondering as to your well-being." "Then why did you not come to see me in the stables? You know where I am." Being a stable hand, my whereabouts should have been no big secret. Matty simply sighed, soft and breathy. "I could not," she said with a touch of sadness to her tone. "I would get my dress dirty." "That never bothered you before." "The dress I wore as a child were not quite as expensive as the ones I wear now. Moreover, mother would kill me." She said the word "kill" with such a girlish delight, her dark eyes flashing, that for a moment she sounded so like my Matty, the wild-haired, wild-eyed pixie child, that my heart constricted in my chest. Then she laughed lightly, early, and the moment was gone. She didn't utilize her words in the same way. Her vocabulary seemed to have expanded most impressively in such a short space of time, but she had always been an intelligent girl, Matty. She just wasn't very talkative, and she never seemed to feel the need to exercise her full command of the English language around others. "Wow, would you look at that? I'm similar." It was not so now. And indispensable part of being a lady was the ability to show off one's own upbringing. It was no use having a glittering necklace if one did not wear it, and words were just the same. There was little point in being educated if you did not flaunt your education brazenly to everyone in the immediate vicinity. Funny enough, that seems like this doesn't apply nowadays at all, if you think about it. It's more like everyone who actually do not have anything worthy to say flaunt around like crazy. Like spreading stupidity, right? Members of the nobility you could impress. Servants you could snub. But perhaps I was the one at fault. Perhaps I was the truly judgmental one, assigning attributes to Matilda based on my own mounting feelings of inferiority. I was afraid she would reject me, even if she had not yet. That was why I was trying to distance myself. Ooh. It was undoubted that she had been avoiding me, but I had been avoiding her too. "I believe I have turned out rather well, despite mother's initial worries," she said, her voice silly, soft, constricted by layers of cloth. She seems much more pleased with my current conduct." A sigh. "For studying the piano is still frighteningly dull. I fear I'm not a natural. My fingers are not long enough, and they do not taper at the ends quite so neatly." "And the French?" She wrinkled her nose, and the freckles wrinkled with it. "I cannot stand it." "Good. Still." She shook her head passionately, and her curls bounced. If she had been younger, she would have spat on the floor. She did not do that now. I have no idea how to read this, and I absolutely don't care how to read this. "Je déteste le François," or something. Did I say it incorrectly? Good. But at least she was still able to joke, and when she laughed at her own feeble attempts at French, tinged with an unmanageable British accent, it was open with abandon. Free. I couldn't help but laugh too. "Oh ho 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 ho. Matty, oh Matty," I said, shaking my head. "I really have missed you." "Well, I should hope so," she said smartly once her laughter had subsided and her shoulders were not shaking. "You should miss me. I'm incredibly beautiful, you know." I knew it all too well. Is that what your suitors tell you?" I asked her. She pulled in her face. "Please, Do not ask me about my suitors. I am entirely uninterested. But I have heard the gossip, I said. Bertha told me. She said you got along quite well, swimmingly, her exact words, with Lord Burlington. With that fop, I would rather hang myself than become betrothed to such a bore. But Bertha is an old fool with too much time on her hands. If she moved her broom with as much aplomb as she moved her mouth, the floors at home would be so clean you could eat of them. Well, you may have a point. Indeed, I do, she said. I'm far too young to think about marriage now. I was rather thinking about French verbs than marriage. Ooh, interesting. But Lord Burlington seemed keen and you looked so happy with him. I have to look happy when I'm with him, or it would hurt his feelings. That is what Mother says. As I give a stuff about his feelings, Matty said, sniffing. But no matter, that is what happens when you get older. You have to start lying. Honestly, it feels like because of that approach, a lot of marriages back in the day were not very the happy ones. Oh, would you look at that? A shady number is calling. I'm so not answering this. Let's do a quick Google. Do you want the number, by the way? I mean, I could give it to you. Why not? Is it a negative number? I mean, the phone said it is. Oh, would you look at that? Seems like an absolutely negative number. Would you look at that? Nobody says what exactly that is for. But whatever. Who cares? I don't know. I feel like you should show your true side. I was always told that lying is wrong. Or lie in a way that will make them not interested. Me too, but adults contradict themselves. You are also an adult, I reminded her. She sighed. Please do not remind me, it is not something I care to think about. French verbs then. She rolled her eyes heavily, with such intense feeling it was almost as though the motion drove the sigh of long suffering out of her lungs. I started to laugh at Matty, and Matty did too. You know, Oliva, she said, letting her voice trail away almost coquettishly. No, I don't. When she blinked up at me from beneath her eyelashes, so long and very flattering, I felt my heart stop beating for a fraction of a second. My throat tensed and my fingers began to spasm at my sides. She had been beautiful as a child, but she was undeniably gorgeous now, a flower in full bloom. A forbidden fruit. What is it, Matty? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper, softer than the brush of the wind that played through the leaves of the mulberry tree. I don't know why I started to whisper, I just felt right, I suppose. Like Matty and I were sharing some kind of secret. Like we were small children again, our fingers and cheeks stained with dark juice popping mulberries into our mouths and one after the other. The lazy summer days continued to roll by, unfettered, the clouds swirling in the sky about our heads like oils in a witch's cauldron. I wished so desperately. I thought my heart would break and that I could go back to those days, or else stay in this singular moment forever. Matty was older now, and had learned to hide her temperament behind soft smiles, how to smooth over awkward silence with silly conversation pite-pate, how to please her parents by bowing her head and listening and obeying, always obeying. One day, she would grow into her still ill-fitting title of a lady, and they would be left behind for good. Abandoned, even more surely than her old dresses, her old eyes crept, rageful and pouts. If only I could exist with Matty forever beneath this mulberry tree. Oliver, she said, her voice still soft. And not quite Matty, but not quite Matilda either. And thank heavens not Lady Addison either. That would come with time. Oliver, she tried again. Yes, Matty. I would far rather marry you than Lord Burlington, you know. Huh? And though it was just a whim, a passing fancy, something that could not be, and could never be, no matter how much either of us may have wished it, I found myself light-headed, drunk on the sweet aroma of the true mulberries, and my own indescribable desire. If only I could have taken her in my arms and kissed her, and kissed her, and kissed her again, until her lips were swollen and her eyes swam with tears. But I could not, because Matty turned her head, smiling that pointed smile of hers, and avoided my gaze. Maybe it was because my desperation was too palpable, too pathetic, and it made her uncomfortable. Or maybe she had never meant it to begin with. Or maybe, you know, she got embarrassed, that's all. Dude! Go after her! Fight! Anyway, Matilda could only say these things because she did not truly love me. Not as much as I loved her. How can you say that? You don't know that! Dude! We'll find out in the next episode, maybe! 6th summer tomorrow. Hope to see you there. No, seriously. I mean, I guess you could say this was kind of her confession out. Yeah. That's what I would say from the whole situation. And he doesn't believe that. What a weird guy. Anyway, we'll see how it all goes tomorrow. I think, am I correct in remembering that this was 7 summers? Yeah, it is 7 summers. So probably in the next one we'll find out what it's all about. That's right. Anyway, hope you all have a wonderful day and feel free to join me tomorrow too. Bye bye.